book's called Airhead. You couldn't be further away from an airhead, Emily.
Oh, I don't know.
It did took a bit of a leap of faith, because I thought what happened was all the blokes that I sort of ran it past loved it. I was sort of waiting to sort of come down on one side or another, because I thought I don't want to belittle what we do, because it actually is really hard most of the time, and that's why I sort of explained quite early on. It's not about sort of, you know, denigrating. It's not about trying to make out we do nothing.
Is it about the perception of women on television? Is it that you get called an airhead?
Funnily enough, it wasn't even that. It was me trying to encapsulate what happens, and we've all had this, where you are standing, normally in the freezing rain, and you're somewhere on live location, and maybe your cameraman doesn't speak English because it's in Hungary, and he's cut off half your head, and you're having this conversation, but you don't know the word for wide shot in Hungarian, and then you realise that there are actually riot police behind you because this whole load of sort of, you know, protesters have come. And then you lose comms with the gallery, and then somebody just goes, and talk. And it's me trying to say, do you know what that feels like in your head? You want to cry and laugh and run away. And actually what you do is you just go, and it all just sort of...
Well, it's funny, you know, there was a moment last night, extraordinary moment for anyone who's in the TV news game, I think, because of who it was. Nicholas Witchell, probably the most experienced royal broadcaster there's ever been, on the BBC 10 o'clock news, had a brain freeze.
And it's a really complicated thing sometimes, and this is something I don't know if people at home would necessarily get, but you start speaking on a row of people who all start speaking at exactly the same moment. And sometimes it comes with the headlines and the bongs and all the chimes as well. I've done an entire broadcast underneath half an hour worth of pealing bells, you know, and that can knock your concentration entirely. And so actually seeing Nick in that very, very human way gets right to the heart of what I'm trying to do in the book, which is say, in case anyone was confused, we're not perfect. It is not a perfect art, what we do. It goes wrong. It goes wrong more times than anyone would ever believe. And, you know, we all stand there, don't we, saying, never again, never again. I'm never doing this again. I'm never going on a set of this. And it's about trying to retain what's in your head, retain what somebody's saying to you. And sometimes it's about a very careful use of language as well. And we're all phenomenally cautious now that we want to be saying the right thing, not saying something awkward, you know, not saying something that's going to go viral because you've used the wrong word.
Which is one of the reasons why you've dedicated an entire chapter to Piers Morgan, apparently.
It is the best chapter in the book, I have to say.
Well, it's the only chapter you read, wasn't it, Piers?
Guess who thought there weren't enough chapters about Piers Morgan? I mean, it came as a surprise to us all, really.
We had an interesting chat about things like from self-confidence to feminism. And I said to you, look, go to a Chippendale show and you'll see the feminist argument about the grid girls and everything else exposed for the hypocrisy it is. And you did go to a Chippendale show.
It was more embarrassing than that. Piers turned round to me and he said, he was, you know, the sort of smoke was coming out of the nostrils and the hair and all the rest of it. It's getting louder and more passionate, and he said, have you ever been to a Chippendale show? Have you been to one? They put women there, just pour them in. And he was sort of putting me on my defence, and I just went, yes, of course I have. Because I grew up in Sheffield, and sometimes I just literally confuse whole chapters of my life with the full Monty. And so I was like, yeah, of course I've been to strip shows, of course I have. And then I went away and I thought, I lied about that. I'm not sure I have actually been to a Chippendale show. And I went to Vegas, took my son, my best friend, a few months later. And just as a joke, I thought, oh, well, I'll ask them if they want an interview. You know, Newsnight does the Chippendales. But it was right in the middle of the whole Me Too movement. And actually, it was the most brilliant idea. And it really hurts me to admit that. I know. It really cost me a lot of pain to admit that. But it was brilliant because I got one Chippendale. And his mates were really interested. They were like, yeah, I'm putting myself through law school. Yeah, I'm just about to do a finance degree. So it turned my whole conception upside down. But you were ultimately wrong, actually.
I wasn't.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, you are.
Because it's all about power. It's all about the balance of power.
Totally agree.
And actually, the Chippendales on stage...
Ultimately, the ones in control.
...have total control.
Why would a boxing ring girl or a grid girl at Formula One or any of those sporting girls who do those things, why have they not got absolute power?
Because it's not about them. The boxing ring girls are still, if you like, subservient to the main sport, which is boxing, whereas the Chippendales are their own show. And one thing that's really interesting was I said to this guy, Ryan, his name was, and I said, you know, don't you get sort of pulled in one direction or another? And he said, no tipping. And I said, why is that different to, you know, women or grid girls. He said, because it's democratic. You know, in America, obviously, tipping's a massive thing, right? So if you're loaded and you've got this big handbag full of notes, you get all the Chippendale to yourself if you're tipping, right? I think it's really important that you tell 3 of us what feminism is all about.
Well, I think it's really important to remind viewers there are 3 women at this desk and 1 bloke, for starters. So I'm a 25% minority group here, right? But let me just say again...
persecuted?
What is that in audio terms? Probably not.
I thought feminism was about... And this reminds me of every dinner party we've ever had so far, by the way. But feminism, I thought, from feminists who've told me this very clearly, is about women having the right to do whatever they want with their bodies. What amazed me was when women made a conscious, absolutely voluntary decision, they wanted to be grid girls or boxing ring girls, which are really good jobs for those women. They were told by the feminists, you can't do that because somehow it's demeaning.
By the feminists. It's not told by the feminists. No feminist sits there and tells other women what they are or aren't allowed to do.
That's exactly what they did do.
No, it was
I had them on the show.
Listen, it was corporate. It was a corporate decision. I totally agree with you that sometimes corporations get nervous, right? The people running the grid things, running the boxing whatevers, go, ooh, the tide's turned, what are we doing? You know as well as I do that happens right across the corporate world where somebody falls out of favour, whether it's Kate Moss taking cocaine or whatever it is, and everyone suddenly goes, oh, we can't have anything to do with her. And they all leave, you know, quick as that, like rabbits. And they creep back 6 months later when nobody's looking. Now, I totally agree with you. That is a kind of corporate hypocrisy when that happens.
Let's talk about your eye roll very quickly. You did this to Barry Gardiner. Have we got the eye roll? Where is it? OK, well...
I'm here.
Yeah, we don't need the eye roll.
We're going to get your eye roll. You did a brilliant eye roll about Brexit and Barry Gardiner and so on.
It's so weird. I didn't realise I'd done it. We've all been watching too much Fleabag, right? And you just... you don't realise there's a moment where you've sort of done that until... You know, I came off there and I was like, I did what? That's really weird. It wasn't about Barry Gardiner. It wasn't about Labour.
Oh, come on. It was about a manifesto position which keeps shifting. It
was about both of them. I mean, I'd just spoken to the Conservative minister before that, and then it was Barry Gardiner. And actually, my only job in those situations is to try and make sense. It's just... Tell me something that I can take back to people watching and make sense, right? If it's not making sense, and sometimes what is really frustrating is they will try and make you sound like you're complicating things. And they go, oh, it's been perfectly simple all along. Now, I'm the first person to say, Brexit, there is nothing simple or clear-cut or obvious about Brexit. So let's be honest about that and say there's no point in you just beating people up when positions are changing and everything's changing.
In all your career, have you ever known a form of paralysis like the one we're facing with Brexit right now?
No.
And should we be should we be genuinely unsettled, if not really quite worried, that we've reached this position?
Do you know what? When people use the word intractable, you know, no way forward, no way back, I'm always like, oh, everything's got a solution. I find it really complicated at the moment. I find what's happened where everyone has just become more convinced of their own positions of being right.
More self-righteous in their own position.
I don't know if I'd call it self-righteous. I'd just call it more convinced, you know. And that's why I think we are more intractable now than ever before. Because in March, you thought, oh, there's something. In May, you know, in April, we thought there was something. And now I just think the longer it goes on, the less clear it's becoming.
I think you speak for a nation. Can we just go back to the idea of Airhead? Because in the papers today... Oh, I'm going to take my earpiece out. Huh? Blimey.
Yeah, go on. Blimey, dramatic moment.
There's a story in the papers today.
We got our fresco now.
You can't do your own blow dry. So, Piers has got a special present.
There we are. Maitlis, here's your Morgan 3000.
There we go. See how messy your hair looks after that. Emily Maitlis, absolutely lovely.
Do I get you to do the blow dry, though, with the hair dryer?
You'd never asked.
Emily Maitlis, thanks very much indeed.
It's a fantastic book, particularly the chapter about me. It's called Airhead. It's out now. Do you have any thoughts on the royal baby before we leave you?
Names. I think they should just call it Sussex. I like that.
Sussex.
Somewhere between, like, Shakespeare and Hollywood.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
quite Game of Thrones, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lovely to see you. Come back onto our almost exclusively female desk anytime you like. And tell me how terrible it is for
Not exclusively
poor women in the business.
Enough.
Yeah, quite.